What's up, everybody? Today, I wanted to talk about Metallica's guitar tones. I've spent months dialing in some of their most iconic sounds, testing everything from free plugins to pro setups. After deep diving into Ride the Lightning, Master of Puppets, and Injustice for All, I've narrowed it down to the best of the best. Each album has its own distinct sound, raw and biting on Ride, focused and commanding on Puppets, and thick and aggressive on Justice. I've tweaked, refined, and pushed these tones as far as I could, and now I'm putting them side by side. Today, I'm breaking down my best recreation from each album, how I got there, and what stands out about them. But first, let's look at what Metallica did for each of these tones. Metallica's tone drastically evolved over their first few albums, and each era has a distinct sound that fans have been chasing for decades. I've been working on recreating some of Metallica's most iconic tones. On Ride the Lightning, they went for a heavy, mid-focused Marshall sound, which gave them really solid results. But when Mesa Boogie came knocking, they took a leap of faith on the Mark II C+. And as we know, that move paid off. This amp shaped the legendary tones on Master of Puppets and Justice for All. Over the past few months, I've been digging into these signal chains, testing out different gear to figure out how to recreate these tones from free plugins to pro level setups. Some of these turned out great, tones I'm really proud of, while others didn't quite hit the mark. Today, I'm showcasing my best recreation from each album, breaking down how I got the tones, and the small tweaks that push them even further. Let's start with Ride the Lightning, a tone that's raw, aggressive, and a little different from what came after. Hey, I'm gonna take a quick second to say, if you like what I'm making, please subscribe, please comment, please like the videos, and if you want to see more behind the scenes content, I have a YouTube membership and a Patreon, which both have the same kind of membership deals, but on Patreon, I have guitar tones that you'll be able to get if you get the highest tier. The YouTube membership has the same tiers, just without the guitar tones. So if you like what I do, you like my content, and you want to support me, I have a YouTube membership, Patreon, and I have Buy Me a Coffee where you can just send me a quick donation. Now back to the video. So for this first tone, I'm actually really happy with one of the cheaper amps, the Brit tone. I think it was the standout on the Ride the Lightning video, and I know a lot of you guys liked it as well. It has a really aggressive mid-focus, which I think suits Ride the Lightning. At this point in their career, Metallica was still refining their sound. On Kill 'Em All, they didn't have much control over their tone. What they got in the studio was essentially what they had to live with. But for Ride, even after James's coveted amp was stolen, they had more say in shaping their sound. They also had a producer who was actually invested in getting it right, which made a huge difference. The core of this tone is pretty simple: a tube screamer into a Marshall amp. It could have been a JCM 800 or a JMP 22203. There's no definitive record, but I've seen info suggesting it might have been a Plexi. That fed into a Marshall cab, likely loaded with G1275s, though some sources suggest G1265s. Either way, it was a pretty straightforward setup, and it gave them the bite that they were after. For my tone, I'm running a TSE 808 into an EQ with a small boost at 250 Hz, then into the Brit tone from Audio Assault. This amp seems to mimic the JCM 900, giving me that aggressive, high-gain character. From there, it runs into NAT IR, where I'm loading a G1275 and a Marshall V30 IR. At the end of my chain, another EQ helps fine-tune the sound. I kept this setup exactly the same as in my Ride the Lightning video. I think it performed perfectly there, and I didn't need to make any changes. It might have a little more gain than the original, but I like the added edge that it has. The chugs have a great crunch, and the power chords have a lot of nice gain saturation to them. And that covers the Ride the Lightning tone. It's sharp, aggressive, and packs just the right amount of grit. But as Metallica moved forward, their sound also evolved. And with Master of Puppets, they took things to an entirely new level. Master of Puppets has to be my favorite Metallica tone, and I'm sure a lot of you would agree. It's one of their most iconic albums, and the guitar tone on it, crafted by Hetfield and Rasmussen, is legendary, partly due to some unconventional choices. Right before the recording, Metallica received an endorsement from Mesa Boogie. They had been Marshall guys up until this point, but they brought the Mark II C+ into the studio this time. At first, they hated it,
sucks, man!
Fleming had to go in and help them shape the tone that they wanted to hear. And obviously they got fantastic results. How he did this was by using HX EQF2 to shape the tone a lot. With those two pieces, they paired it with a Marshall cab featuring either the G1275 or the G1265 speakers, and that helped define one of the most iconic tones in metal. And that set them apart from the Marshall heavy scene. For my version, I made a few subtle tweaks from the last video that I made on this. I started by adding an EQ at the front end with that slight boost at 250 Hz. The EQ goes straight into the Neural DSP Mesa Boogie Mark II C++. I'm also using NAD-IR, blending a G1275 with a Marshall 1960A V30 IR, and then I have one more EQ at the end to try and match what the HX EQF is doing. I made some simple changes to how I'm EQing at the end, but I think they bring me closer to that Master of Puppets vibe. This tone is what I think of when I hear Metallica. The mid-scooped tone that they've become known for really came to life on this album. It's also what kicked off my journey into tone matching, and I'm really proud of how far I've come. While it's not an exact replica of the Master of Puppets tone, I've done my best to capture the spirit of what they use in the studio with the tools that I have. It's a really fun process, and I'm really glad with all the small tweaks that I made to get closer to that iconic sound. So, Master of Puppets gave us one of the most defining tones in metal. But Metallica wasn't done evolving. That journey continued on their next album, And Justice for All, where the tone took a sharp turn and became more aggressive. Let's dive into that. So now we have And Justice for All. Just as iconic as Master of Puppets, but somehow even more infamous. It took the heavy mid-scoop sound that Metallica had on Puppets and pushed it even further. The result was an even heavier tone, but the guitars had so much low end in them that they had to completely cut out the bass tracks. Whether that was the right call or not doesn't really matter anymore. The tone stuck and people love it. And not because it's technically perfect, but because of the sheer intensity of the songwriting and the performances on the album. For this tone, they didn't actually change that much from Master of Puppets. It's still the Mark II C++, a Marshall cab, and the two EQ-F2s at the end of the chain. The difference was in how they dialed it in. This time, the low end was pushed even farther, and the mids were scooped even further, giving it a more aggressive edge. It fits the album's darker, angrier sound, and whether intentional or not, it became a defining part of Justice's identity. For my tone, I chose the Fluff 2C+. I think it worked really well in that video, but I'm tweaking it slightly to get closer to what I want to hear. This runs into an EQ with that slight boost at 250 Hz, then into the Fluff 2C+, paired with NAD-IR again. On this tone, I'm still using the G1275, but I'm switching it to a Mesa V30 because it gives it that nice low end that And Justice for All has. And it's what I used in the original video. Then finally at the end I have that last EQ. I made some more slight tweaks to it to make it fit a little bit better, and I'm really happy with what I got. The Fluff 2C+ is a great option for those of you who don't want to shell out the big money for the Neural DSP stuff. It still delivers that 2C+ tone without the big price tag. Justice has Metallica's most aggressive tone yet, and I think I've struck a good balance here, capturing the heaviness, but keeping the low end and gain in check. At the end of the day, the Justice tone is not the most balanced, but it's one of Metallica's most aggressive and distinct sounds, and that's what makes it so memorable. Now that we've broken down these tones, let's hear them in action. Here's a back-to-back-to-back demo of my 3 favorite Metallica tones. Let me know which one you think comes the closest. Each of these tones has its own unique character. My ride tone feels like the closest I've gotten to the album while giving it a slight modern refresh. I like a gain-saturated tone, and the Brit tone keeps the Marshall bite with a little extra edge. Master Puppets has always been my favorite Metallica guitar tone, and after a lot of tweaking behind the scenes, I think I've finally nailed my definitive version. Justice is all about keeping that aggressive, heavy tone without turning it into a low-end mess. Trying to recreate Metallica's sound is always a challenge. There are tailored Metallica IRs that can get you there instantly. And, amazingly enough, my friend over at Tone Deck has some of the best ones that you can get. He is now partnered with me, so if you use my code Brian15, you'll get 15% off IRs on his store. He's already created IRs for all 3 of these albums, and they sound incredible. If you want a quick way to nail these tones, definitely check them out. But for me, I love piecing together their signal chain by ear and crafting my own version of these tones. It's like solving a puzzle, and there's something rewarding about getting as close as possible with what I have. I'll never have an exact match. James's playing and gear are impossible to replicate, but I can create something that I love using for these videos, on my deep dives, and just jamming. And I enjoy sharing the process with you guys, so that you guys can tweak them at home. Thanks for following along on this journey. I'll definitely explore more Metallica tones and their albums and other bands' albums in the future, but for now, I'm going to put these 3 tones to rest. Alright, so I've been running a few polls on YouTube to see what kind of content you guys want more of, and I really appreciate everyone who's voted so far. But now, I want to put everything together in one big, comprehensive poll to make sure I'm heading in the right direction. It's a quick Google form, no personal info required, just a few questions to help shape the future of the channel. So if you voted in the previous polls, I'd love for you to take a minute, fill this one out too. The link's in the description. Thank you guys for your input. Thank you so much if you made it this far. I really appreciate all your support. If you haven't, liked, comment, subscribe if you can. And if you're interested, please check out my Patreon. And if you enjoyed this video, I want you to check this one out right here. It's a video I actually just made. It's on Metallica's Ride the Lightning guitar tone. I did 4 levels of it, from cheapest gear to the most expensive gear that I have. And if you enjoyed this video, I think you'll enjoy that one. If you made it this far, thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next video. Peace!